Welcome to Competition Law course, and dear learner, today we are going to discuss the laws of competition remedies which are prevalent at various jurisdictions, like the laws on competition remedies which are prevalent in the European Union, especially the European Commission Notice on Remedies 2004, European Commission Regulation 2008, and we will see that how the competition remedies their purview, ambit, and scope under the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. Competition Remedies Rule 2011 happens to address some of the major concerns and try to envisage a kind of a system of competition remedies which happens to be suitable not only to all the parties but for the promotion, sustenance of the competition in the market. We'll be also examining the United States Antitrust Remedial Manual of 2020 to look at how it tries to encapsulate the broad objectives and goals of the competition remedies and to what extent it tries to offer the best kinds of remedies for the embarrassment and as well as the enforcement of the competition law across all the jurisdiction. Then we will try to see some of the provisions of the rules, dear learner and viewer. What we are going to do and discuss with you is a broad or bird's eye view of the laws, as I have mentioned. Although the National Competition Law and Authority also happens to have a catena of remedies, and they try to address the questions of competition disputes in a very amicable manner, but it is thought all the more necessary to look at the corpus of the competition remedies across all the jurisdictions, especially in the European Union and the United States. We'll be also looking at a case study of the competition remedies and its laws in reference to the behavioral remedies which we have discussed in the previous lecture and its receptivity and application in the Israeli competition law and how the Israeli Competition Authority reacted to the issue of structural remedies and the behavioral remedies. With this introduction, let's again try to understand the nature of the structural and the behavioral remedies in order to appreciate that as to what happens to be the case of Israeli competition law in particular. Dear learner and viewer, for the sake of reiteration, we will be discussing that the extraterritorial application of competition remedies lectures which we had in the previous occasion. We have been delineating on the issue of the nature of competition remedies. We have realized some of the major problems which tries to create hindrance in advancing competition remedies, and we also dissected the kinds and classification of the competition remedies in reference to a structural behavior, or what you can say the conduct remedies. We appreciated the relative merits and demerits of both the remedies. Here, what we are going to see that if we apply the behavioral remedies, which is generally said to be a kind of a different or difficult proposition simply because of the fact that the behavioral remedies happens to be an ongoing exercise, it is going to be a perpetual exercise, and sometimes it becomes very dexterous for the competition agencies and authorities to advance any remedies under the behavioral remedies, as we have seen into major cases during the last lectures, that one pertains to the year of 2010, where the United States Department of Justice, in a famous case of Ticketmasters and Live Nation, have reached to ultimately a consent decree, and the behavioral remedies have been advanced after the approval of the merger of the firm and divesting of the assets and acquisition of the asset. Dear learner and viewer, we also refer to 2020 decision of the European Commission on the issue of the behavioral remedies and try to gauge this point, that how European Commission has accepted the commitments proposed by the Google in connection with its acquisition of Fitbit, and how it imposed a series of behavioral remedies which a perpetual watch and vigilance before approving the entire issue of the merger and the amalgamations. These two cases, in our understanding, happens to be very fresh. And now we will see that what exactly we can say about the limitations and shortcomings of the behavioral remedies. Some scholar commenting on the working of the behavioral remedies have not only brought the limitations and shortcomings of the behavioral remedies, it has very they have very pinpointedly located the lacunae in the implementation and enforcement of the behavioral remedies. This can be understood in a better way by giving the example from the jurisdiction of Israel. And what we see that in recent year, in the Israeli jurisdiction of the competition law, what we have noticed in the recent year under the Israeli jurisdictions of the competition law, that approximately 0.5 to 2.5% of the merger in Israel were approved subject to any remedies at all. And this raises a very interesting question, that how Israeli competition law vis-a-vis the Israeli competition authorities have reached to a conclusion wherein we find not only that what are the ongoing process of the behavioral remedies and how difficult and dexterous it happens to be from the standpoint of implementation of the competition remedies. The Israeli experiences and Israel's encounter of advancing behavioral remedies have resulted into a complete abandonment of the behavioral remedies. Commenting on the survey which was conducted under the competition law in Israel, what we have identified that 0.5 to 2.5% of the merger in Israel were approved without any kind of a conditionality and any kind of a riders to advance behavioral remedies. And that way, some scholars have rightly pointed out that when we see the extraterritorial application of the competition remedies in Israeli jurisdictions, we find that there is a complete collapse of the behavioral remedies. In addition to what we have noticed in cases of the 2.5% of the cases of merger in Israeli jurisdiction, be that a complete abandonment, be that a complete departure, or be that a kind of a collapse of the behavioral remedies, what we find that the Israeli Competition Authority has encountered perpetual difficulties and frequent complaints in the enforcement of the divestiture duties among the firm. And as we have discussed the entire process of divesting of the assets and its consequent process of acquisition of the assets. So the divestor and as well as the acquirer of the assets in a competitive market and the firms. The Israeli experience goes on to record a series of cobwebs, hurdles, and hiccups when the authority was charged with imposition of divestiture duties to the firm and the parties. Thus, what the Israeli competition authorities experiences and in counter to the behavioral remedies of the competition remedies turns into that it evolved to a legal dispute further as to how the divestiture duties and divestiture process and the divestiture proceedings are to be executed and enforced so that the competition remedy should not be a mere clock but a reality. To see that the competition remedies under the behavioral remedies can go in the overall advancement of the remedies to the parties in 20 2017, the Israeli competition authorities finally reached to the conclusion and have dramatically changed its policy and harping back again to fix its first approach remedy and made the entire divestiture only as a condition to consummation of the merger and and actualization of any kind of a merger transactions. Thus, what we find from the experiences of the Israeli National Competition Authority that there happens to be a dramatic improvement in the compliance of the parties with the imposed remedies and improvement in their effectiveness. So, here the basic question which can be raised or the basic takeaways of the Israeli Competition Authority's exposure and encounter to the application of behavioral remedies happens to be that it have very categorically compared and contrasted the fact that if we insist on the application and enforcement of the behavioral remedies, then what are the comparative advantages of advancing this remedy? Or in other words, we can say that the Israeli Competition Authority reached to the conclusion that if we keep aside the behavioral remedies for the moment and we abandon it and we collapse it and we try to approve all kind of the mergers or some partial merger, not a substantial merger, without involving the behavioral remedies into that, what benefits it accrue to the firms, parties, and the market. And then the experiences of the Israeli competition authorities have a propensity and tilting towards the fix it first remedy than that of divestiture proceedings and the behavioral remedies. With this, what we realize that the Israeli competition remedy happens to be very interesting as well as very insightful in the overall understanding of the working of the competition remedies, especially the kinds and classification of the remedies. It is under this context what we find that what we discussed earlier, then we have to look into Israeli competition remedy by the Israeli competition authorities and their experiences in a very demonstrative and a pragmatic manner. And we have to learn some lessons from the Israeli experiences of application of the competition remedy in the extraterritorial, and as well as in a transnational manner. And what we learn is that the imposition of the remedies is working very well, as it has been documented that in the early years of the 21st century, we noticed almost 20% of the mergers were approved subject to remedies imposed on the parties And the figure which comes from the empirical evidences of the working of the structure and the behavior remedies, what we find that 40 to 65% of the competition remedies are promoted and decided by the Israeli competition authorities happens to be the behavioral remedies. It means that what has been said earlier, that there is a complete sense of abandonment of the behavioral remedies under the overall working of the competition remedies in Israel, or as we have maintained earlier, that there has been a collapse of the behavioral remedies in the Israeli competition jurisdictions by the Israeli competition authorities is not a fact which are being corroborated by the empirical evidences. What remains is the fact is that the Israel have leveraged and tried to escape the labyrinth of the behavioral remedies, and only 0.5% to 2.5% merger, they have charted a different route and a course without involving the behavioral remedies in case of approval and merger. But in the bulk of the cases, or in the majority of the cases, the Israeli competition authority happens to be meticulously involved in the ongoing process of the behavioral remedies by keeping a constant vigilant watch to the firms, to the market, and the conduct of the parties, and it varies from 40 to 65%, and whereas an approximately 20% mergers were approved subject to structural remedies. And then we compare and contrast, what we find is still the behavioral remedies has more have are spreading their tentacles in the Israeli competition authorities. In that sense, it is not wrong to assume that remedies which were imposed in Israel to regulate the market in a way was primarily focusing on the core issue, and the core issue happens to be improving competition, sustaining competition, restoring competition. Those objects and those goals within the realm of the competition authorities are necessarily related to the divestiture proceedings, acquisition of the assets, and the merger have been probed in a very disastrous manner, and the Israeli competition authorities had a growing recognition that remedies should be limited to cases where there are a specific competition concerns, and those competition concerns have an adverse and appreciable effect in the market. And then it is to be seen that in the context of Israel, that the sense of growing recognition which is there in relation to the actual working of the competition remedies in relation to the structural remedies and the behavioral remedies, we find that behavioral remedies, as it happens to be in elsewhere and the other jurisdiction, seems to be less desirable, and there has been a substantial decrease in the application of the behavioral remedies, and the kind of remedies which are offered by the Israeli competition authorities happens to be something based on a pragmatic formula of fix it first approach of the competition remedies. I hope, dear learner and viewer, that in the entire discussion on the competition remedy, the experiences of Israeli competition law vis-a-vis the Israeli competition authorities will be an additional information, because bulk of the market and the bulk of the product from Israel happens to be having a very wider acceptance in the global market, and the presence of some of the multinational companies which owes its origin in Israel have an overwhelming presence in the world. So any discussion on the extraterritorial application of competition law, be that the embarrassment, be that the enforcement, be that the competition remedies, Israeli response to the competition remedy serves as a ready reckoner and happens to be a kind of a model to be seen with great care and circumspection in other jurisdiction and at the world level. With this, dear learner and viewer, I conclude, and I wish a happy learning and to have more browsing on the issue of the competition remedies and the Israeli response to the competition law and authority. Thank you very much.